right. Good evening, everybody. The time is 5:04 p.m. and I'll go ahead and call today's meeting of the School Building Committee to order. It is Monday, December 5th, and we'll start with a roll call. Ms. Hume is not able to be here today. Mayor Kokoris?
Here.
Mr. Avil?
Here.
Mr. Devon?
Here.
Chairwoman Fiskieger?
Here.
Superintendent Lee?
Here.
Mr. Spellman?
Here.
And Mrs. Cello's not here, and I am here. Great. And moving right along to consideration of approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was on October 17th, 2022. Everybody should have received those and had an opportunity to review. Any comments or discussion with regards to the minutes? There's been a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, that is unanimous. Thank you. All right, so moving right along to South Middle School and our project update. We have with us this evening Doug Murray from Hill, and also by way of recognition, David Billings, and Principal Rainey from South, Brian Pace from MDS, and Sarah Kaufman from the school department. Doug, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening. After the meeting notes is the project dashboard, per usual. In the last, since we last met, now a month and a half or so, we have continued with the exterior sheathing and the air vapor barrier masonry has started. The CMU down at the gymnasium is pretty much wrapped up, and we are proceeding with glazing and the window frames. In fact, glass is going in, so we are tightening up the building for the weather, and we are continuing with the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection, fire alarm rough that's going in now. In the coming month, we actually got site paving into at the lower level. We got the parking lot and the drive loop there, as well as the loop in front of the school and along the west side, which is where the kitchen and service entry are going to be. Coming up, we're going to continue with masonry on the outside and the windows and try to get that wrapped up. We're going to try to get the waterproofing on the outside of the gymnasium, the membrane, and start the masonry in those areas. We have a few site items to pick up, including the drainage for the roof drains from the kitchen and the gymnasium. And we'll be finishing up. Pretty much the site work is going to be wrapping up for the winter in the next few weeks. In terms of the overall schedule, we are on schedule with one caveat, which everyone I think was made aware of, or most people were made aware of, is that we did have a problem with the delivery of the switchgear. About a month ago, they made us aware that the switchgear was going to be pushed till a late June delivery or shipping, which would be delivery around July 1st, which was our projected substantial completion. We have executed a change order of $54,000, which the contractor did not mark up, to provide move the switchgear to an April slot. That's the main switchboard. So that being said, we hope that delivery will be here on May 1st. That would give us the rest of May to wire the general power to the building. There are two panels which service some areas in the building, which is attached at the back of this section of the package. There's a diagram here. The areas in red, those two panels serve the power, the receptacles and things. The only one concern in that area that we have is the kitchen, and obviously getting that, up and running and tested more or less for school beginning. Those two panels are currently slated to ship on July 19th. So we're still working on moving those two panels up. It's a limited amount of area. All the wiring will be done for them. Everything is just a matter of getting those two pieces of equipment in. They are rather large pieces. So we talked about trying to redesign them and move. There was metering sockets in them and things. We talked about moving those sockets outside, technical jargon, but the reality, in the end, we feel that if they're delivered, if they're shipped on the 19th, we'll have them in time to, install, because it's a relatively quick install. The emergency panel was slated for to be in July as well. We said that wasn't going to work. With the advancement of the main switchboard to April, that is moved into the June slot. So that expected to be here on July 1st. Again, a relatively, I don't want to say simple, but a quicker, because we're putting the main switchboard in May, they'll be able to concentrate their efforts on getting that installed in June or July. And then, so what we're projecting now is a substantial completion of the building would be on July 31st, along with the site.
Could we take a
Well,
pause?
excuse me?
Take a pause there in case anybody has any questions about the switchboards, the switch gears, or the impact of the adjustments in the schedule on those?
All right, go
I have
ahead.
a question.
Okay.
Are there any other actions that are going to need to take place on the site that are going to be kind of delayed as a collateral effect of the delays in the installation of the two panels?
I've spoken with the building department briefly, and the fire department came out to the site. We talked about furnishing the building, which is, the next step, which we had hoped to do in June. When we'll get the furniture and equipment later in the meeting. But what we're now thinking about, the furniture people or our furniture consultant is telling us a July delivery of furniture is still not an issue. They just tell them when. We'd love to get it in June. If the fire department is okay with us having the fire alarm system wired up for permanent power in that June timeframe, then we will start loading the building as soon as we can. If there's any disagreement, and they want it because, the fire alarm system's got to work under emergency power, either we temporarily wire it or we talked about posting a fire watch overnight. The reality is if it's under permanent power would have to fail for the fire alarm not to work. So, it's what are the actual chances of that ever actually happening? So that's something we will work with through the fire department. We don't have a hard set of rules yet because we haven't gotten all the delivery dates nailed down. But as that was the next step, is to get the building furnished, and then, obviously nobody's saying, populate, the school kids would not be allowed in there, but the whole target is to hit that August 1st date. And then you can staff the building, teachers can be in, and everybody can be working.
And then in the event that there's some further unforeseen delay in the delivery of either of those two pieces of equipment, is there a backup to the backup plan?
That's what we're working on. That is why we're working on the temporary fire alarm plan.
Okay.
So if we can wire it, it's a single panel, well, it's not a single panel, but it's a set of panels that would need to be temporarily wired, and then we would have to disconnect and rewire when the actual emergency panel shows up.
And what about unrelated to furnishing the building? Is there a backup in case either one of those panels is further delayed? Is there a generator option, or?
We'd have to come up with a temporary solution to allow the work to continue through the summer to hit that September date.
So can I just ask that, in it preparing for the worst, that we start to think about an alternative plan in the event that either of those are delayed, to make sure that we stay on track for the fall opening?
We are working on it.
Great, thank you.
Moving on. In terms of the overall budget, we are, including the change order, which we'll present tonight, change order number 5, we've spent $586,000 in contingency for construction. That is out of the $4.3 million that we had, so it's a very, I think it's less than 5%. I'd have to do the math myself, but overall, we are 55% of the way billed through the job from the contractor, so we feel that we're well within our contingency allowance at this point. We do have a forecast. We do see another, we have $300,000 there, where obviously that number may modify as we go forward. We have some change orders credits coming back that we hope to see, as well as there's still some potential adds out there that we're not including, additional costs for electrical systems. So the next item is invoices. Bacon Construction change order, the second package. Bacon Construction's change order number 5, submitted for approval because it's over 100. It's $123,000. It's actually on the back of the front package. Just stapled it in the wrong spot. Most of it coordination issues, some fire alarm issues. The master box was deleted by the fire department, but it did require us to add some work to go into the security system. We are seeing a credit that will show up elsewhere later in another change order regarding the excavation and the work that went to put in that conduit. There was some steel work, some drainage revisions, some water line revisions, and some other miscellaneous items, which I can address if anybody has any questions. But there was some coordination items that needed to be done. Because of public bidding, the electrician, we show the electrical systems for one set of kitchen equipment or one set of equipment, and if the mechanical guy or the kitchen guy submits one of the other bidders or one of the other listed equipment, it may not line up exactly with what was designed to for the, used as a basis of design. And in that coordination, we've seen a couple of ads here and there. But so we'd be looking for approval of that $123,000, $123,301.90 change order.
Does anybody have any questions for Doug? Mr. Devon, certainly.
Through the chair. Okay, so you have specifications. We know when you look at specifications, there'll be 3 or 4 different, shall we say, items that you can select from, because you can't go sole source or something to that effect. Now, I don't know, let's say you're going with Westinghouse versus something else. Okay, that's something else. If it doesn't line up correctly with what we were hoping to get, why should we pay that change order? I don't understand.
Because it's two separate trades is the problem. The electrician bids the electrical drawings. The kitchen guy or the HVAC guy is bidding the HVAC section. The coordination of those items may not necessarily, if we go on the basis of design, it's listed as the baseline, and if they want 2 number 12 wires, but then the other guy wants 3 number 14s, I could show the 3 number 14s and ask for a credit, but I may not get the value back on the credit, or I could show it the way on the basis of design and pay an ad if one is coming forward, And we evaluate each of those as they come through. When you think about in terms of the overall project, this is very minor. These are, I don't want to say they're minor, but they're limited amount of items that come up when we're moving things around. And it's not always, some of these are not, the majority of the items are not that coordination. There's also coordination with, soffits being in radiant panels and that sort of thing that's occurred in part of these, which, again, I could go through them individually if you want me to.
Well, it's been my experience that, you walk in and you're going to talk, I'm the MEP guy. Okay, great. I'm going to sit down. I'm probably going to talk to my carpenters. I'm going to talk to some of the other subs and whatnot, saying, hey, this is what we're looking at over here. That's done in a coordinated meeting. But very rarely, unless things change 180, would I have a change order where money reflects on that, because I was supposed to carry some of that within my budget. It's just been my experience.
Right, but it's because of the 2 trades bidding individually. Then you're coming back together and bringing the 2 trades together. And when you're talking about $66 million, that sort of money involved in those coordination items are relatively minor.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I mean, I can go through them and, we can break them down individually, because then you've got the drywaller throwing in money to, redo things and taping and move walls and that sort of thing. So that's the coordination items that come up. Because each bid,
open walls and whatnot. Sometimes you're like, hey, this was run wrong. Rip it out, do it again. But at some point in time, there's a change order on that. But unless you can find that it was designed correctly, if it was put in incorrectly, that person's the person that's supposed to take the hit on that, not always the owner.
Right.
Does that happen?
Yeah, we understand that. If they install something incorrectly, they're responsible for tearing it out and replacing it.
Excellent, thank you.
Again, and,
That's
you
what
know,
I was looking
again,
for.
we can go back to the discussion, the contingency many times, but that's, kind of why it's there. Because we know that there's going to be times when the two trades don't align. It's
Most
an
definitely.
unfortunate part of the
Thank you,
thing.
Madam Chair. That answers my question. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Devon. Does anybody else have any questions about the change orders? So I'm just curious, Doug, two that stand out to me are the drainage and the water line revisions, particularly because I know there was a lot of, during the design phase, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of review, particularly around the drainage. So if you could talk a little bit more about why there was additional, I think, earthwork that was required on both of those items that was not anticipated under the original pricing.
The water line revision actually, I don't want to, we probably saved $150,000 on that one.
Sounds great.
This is what happened on that one. There was a water line shown from Peach Street connecting to the building. We went over this, I think, early in the job. When we discovered that that line had not been accounted for to be lowered because we were cutting off so much grade, that we then looked at, we had two services connecting, one from Celia Road and one from Kenmore Road, that those two lines supplying the loop around the building, whether that would be sufficient to not have to reuse the Peach Street connection. We were able to determine that those would work. We had them retested. There was a change order for $1,400 or something to do that. And then, so discovering that, we were able to eliminate this line. However, it did involve work to cap the line at Peach Street, to extend the line to Celia Road, and also to rip up the existing line because it was now in the way of the new paving and subgrade. The drainage revisions for but the whole back about saving 150 grand was that had we had to reinstall that line, it would have been an add of that much. And, credit to Brian for wherever he is. There he is. Credit for Brian. We talked about it and we came up with this idea of maybe just voiding the line. And that's what happened. The second issue is the drainage revisions are the roof drains were shown, the roof drains from the gymnasium, the kitchen were shown going to downspouts, which should have been connected to an under drain and connected to the drainage, the underground drainage system, the underground retention basin, and eventually to the retention pond. It was a miss. They were not. They were shown coming down, and there was no connection to those drainage lines. We had to add them. We asked the planning department to allow us to spill them to grade, which should have worked, but they, saying it's not the way the grading permit was written. It doesn't seem like a smart idea to do that. So we ended up adding those to the drainage revisions to change order.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. Mr. Devon.
We know that when you were doing some of the water supply lines from Liberty, that we had to change the hydrant several times, and it was a situation where it had to be buried every single night. So in other words, we incurred costs in that for safety reasons because of buses going over, and we couldn't steel plate it, that every single night they had to dig it up, do the work on it, and then bury it back down. And I know that, and it was teamed in with that one undersized line that if they kept it where it is, it would have been 4 feet above the ground, if I remember correctly, in looking at the prints. So seeing that number, it's one of the few things I'll actually look at and say, wow, we got a deal here. With that, moving of the hydrant by itself and some of the other work within this change order that makes it far easier for us to supply the building. So very nice job on it. Thank you.
And that whole, relocating the line out there was because of we hit ledge, and that's why we had to do the cut and cover.
Great, and on that note, I think I'd be looking for a motion to approve change order in the amount of $123,301.90. It's been a motion made and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great, that is unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. In addition to those, we also attached the invoices from Millard I. Spears and Hill International, as well as the 2 Bacon applications for payment, number 10 and number 11, in the total amount of $9,621,424.93 for acknowledgement in this meeting. The next item is furniture and equipment, which we have discussed at a few meetings now, and the town, or the state share, the state budget allowed for $960,000. Yeah, it has, and that's $1,200 per student for $800. I think if you talk to anybody in the business right now, everybody says that number is not sufficient, and the state should be relooking at that number. We did the estimate, and we came out, our estimate at one point was $1.386 million. We looked at value engineering options, reuse options, all of which were discussed, I don't want to say thrown aside, but found to be, in the end, not really going to save us a huge amount of money. One was reusing the chairs that had been delivered to East that were unacceptable and been replaced, and then the vendor had just said, well, keep the chairs. Those have unfortunately been dispersed throughout the school system, and so you'd be stealing from Peter to pay Paul to use those again. So we did go through bidding. We had public bidding in November, and as it stands now, with the approval, we seek tonight the estimate, or we would be looking for $1,429,552.63 in the approval of the contracts. Those contracts are in this sheet here. This was done, obviously, a couple weeks ago. And so everything highlighted were things that had been approved and were according to the spec, no alternates submitted, anything like that. The 2 items at the top, Creative Office Resources and Hertz Furniture, if you notice, the 2 numbers kind of switch places if we accept the amount if awarded with alternates. However, the review of the 2 items that were affected by the cost, the chairs, and it says filing cabinets, but it really was filing cabinets and bookcases. The chairs that were proposed as an alternate, the fabric actually wrapped the chair edge rather than having a hard edge on it. And in her review, our furniture consultant felt that was not, it's an alternate, but it was not an acceptable alternate, and we were not recommending it be accepted. The filing cabinets as well, and the metal bookshelves, it was a lighter gauge metal, and she didn't feel those were acceptable either. The weight loading would not be equal to what we had asked for. So in that case, she suggested the $317,509 to Creative Office Resources and the $140,025.75 to Hertz Furniture be awarded as they were bid, which is the recommended bid amount in the left-hand column. Down below, the Creative Office Furniture Resources for student desks, L-shaped desks, student chairs, W. Mason, that was all recommended. But then the Robert Lord Company and Hertz Furniture, again, relates to the cafeteria booths. The cafeteria booths were about $40,000 over budget to get what we wanted, or to get the 24, which is attached as the next page, is what appeared in the contract documents. As you can see, the square booths in front of the stage, between the entry doors and out by the windows at the bottom, those were the booths. There were seating for 24 students in those booths. That was about $40,000 over the budget. We had looked at 2 options at 8 and 0, which is the next page. The 8 would just be over between the entry doors, and then the option 1, all tables, would be, no booths, but obviously we have to supplement those with tables and chairs. So they did modify the prices. On the next page here, gave you the 3 options. A $41,000 add to go with the current proposal, $14,000 of savings if you deleted all the booths, and then $2,800 if you went back in with 4 booths. We obviously could do 12 or 16 if that was the option. In the end, the discussion was for $41,000 on top of a $1.4 million contract. It's a rather low number, and whether or not it was sufficient to not, whether or not the savings you were going to realize was sufficient to change the program that you wanted. And the recommendation from us, which it's just a recommendation, is that we go ahead with the $1.4 million option. And in terms of going back to the dashboard, I know this gets complicated, that money would be taken from the contingency, the soft cost contingency, which stood before today, or originally was at $1.764 million. We had spent about $50,000 of that prior to this for some design services and administrative costs. And so adding the $469,000 of additional expenses, we would reduce the contingency, the soft cost contingency, by $519,000 total for a current contingency of $1.244 million. So in our opinion, we feel that the contingency is sufficient to approve the furniture as the bids were received.
I'm sorry, Doug. And so we would be looking to maintain the current design with all of the original booths and absorb the cost through the contingency for
Yes.
that? Okay. I'd like to give an opportunity, Principal Rainey, if you want to weigh in on kind of the impact of the layout of the cafeteria and the seating, just because it is a significant amount of funding beyond what was budgeted. So I would be curious to kind of hear your thoughts and perspective from yourself or any of the staff that have weighed in on this issue. Please.
Thank you for the opportunity to present. So the designs that we have seen have the booths often at one end of the cafeteria and at the other end. That was how we initially conceived of it when we were looking at a cafeteria that was 2 separate spaces with a dividing wall. And then that became very quickly cost prohibitive, and the wall became a curtain, and then the curtain became a nothing. So we're basically dealing with one large space, and what we had looked at using that restaurant style banquette as is a bulkier piece of furniture to sort of divide the spaces. So it would kind of run down the center of the room and separate one grade. We're planning on basically having 2 grades in the one large space, going through the servery at different times and using the banquettes, the booth style, to create a serving line, but also to separate the room so it's easier to keep the kids on one side when they're supposed to be separated. So if we were to look at reducing the number, we could kind of turn them out and have it be rows with chairs on the other side. But as we looked at it more, basically we would like to have some of that bulkier furniture, those bulkier furniture pieces, to separate it out. It does also add some of the visual pizzazz that we were looking for, because this is going to be a cafetorium, and so we had talked about trying to use the booth seating for some smaller performances and things like that to have kind of a cabaret style. That's still in the works. We'll see if Mr. Lee approves that sort of use. But on the day-to-day, it would be very useful to be able to keep the room divided like that so the kids kind of know where to go.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions about the FF&E and where things stand? Okay. So Doug, am I correct that what you would be looking for is vote to award contracts for FF&E in the amount of $1,429,552.63 to those contractors set forth in the document provided to the committee?
That is correct.
Okay. There's been a motion made. Is there a second? Seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you.
I believe I've taken enough of your money this evening, so I'm gonna call it quits.
Thank you. And I just want to take this opportunity also, we did just receive the latest November drone flyover footage. It's on the town's Facebook page. I believe it's on the South Project update page. Would really encourage folks to check it out. With every month's footage, it looks more and more like a school. You can see the courtyard. You can get a sense of the full layout. And on a personal note, I had a chance to take my parents by the site, and for a dad who got his start in construction, it was really wonderful for him to see as well. So everybody should definitely check out that footage because it's really exciting to watch the property kind of grow right before our eyes. So thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Moving on to the community questions portion of the agenda. Don't see anybody here, so we'll move on to our next meeting, which wildly enough takes us to January 2023. Doug, do we have any items that will be requiring approval or review in January that should focus our meeting schedule? Okay. So looking at the calendar, how about Monday, January 9th? School committee? Okay, 6:30? Okay. So if we met Monday, January 9th at 5 p.m. here in Cahill Auditorium, so we can continue to broadcast for folks watching at home, we'll go ahead and pencil that in. And before we conclude, I just want to say thank you to BCAM for broadcasting us this evening and every month when we have an opportunity to meet here in Cahill. So thanks very much to the team in the back. And with that, I will take a motion to adjourn. There's been a motion made. Is there a second? There's a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Happy New Year. Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you.